Formula One fans are not one group of people. They are 100 smaller tribes wearing the same merch, sitting in the same grandstand, quietly judging each other, just as I am judging you. Some of these people are lovely. Some of these people should not be allowed near a phone during a race weekend. Today we're going through the full lineup, and by the end of this you'll absolutely recognize yourself in at least 2 of them, and that's fine. We all contain multitudes, most of them insufferable. Before we start, a quick disclaimer: nobody fits neatly into just one of these boxes. Most fans are a blend. 70% one type, 20% another, with a small trace amount of something embarrassing they deny under oath. Vague enough that you'll see yourself in most of it, specific enough that it'll sting a little when it lands. Let's start with the stats guy. You know this person. You mention a driver had a decent race, and within 4 seconds they've told you the exact tire degradation numbers, the undercut window in seconds, and why actually the real story of the race was a pit stop that happened on lap 19 that nobody else noticed. The stats guy does not watch races so much as audit them. They have opinions about front wing flex that they will share whether or not you ask. Talking to a stats guy about a Grand Prix is like asking someone what time it is and getting handed a fully annotated blueprint of the clock. Genuinely harmless though. Worst case, you learn something. Then you've got the trackside tourist. This person has never watched a full race at home in their life, but they will spend $2,000 flying somewhere to stand in a field wearing a novelty hat, mostly to take a photo of the big screen with their phone. They know maybe 4 driver names, they'll cheer whoever's currently in the lead regardless of the team, and they'll leave the circuit more sunburned than informed. Honestly, respect. They understood the actual point of Formula One quicker than most of us, which is that it's an excuse for a nice weekend abroad with a loud noise in the background. The only danger they pose is buying merchandise so overpriced it should technically count as a hostage situation. Next, the fantasy league sweat. This person's actual emotional investment in a race has nothing to do with who wins. It's entirely about whether their fantasy team's 3rd driver scored enough points to beat their coworker's lineup.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
They'll be devastated by a driver finishing 11th instead of 9th in a way that makes no sense. Unless you understand it cost them a rank on a leaderboard nobody else in their life has ever heard of. You'll ask them who won the race and they'll say, "No idea, but my midfield picks were incredible today." This is a person who turned watching cars go fast into a spreadsheet hobby. And honestly, fair play. Now the local hero fan. Doesn't matter what team, doesn't matter what car, doesn't matter how the season's going. They support whoever shares their passport. This is the person who is cheering for a driver stuck in a car fighting for 19th on pure nationalism alone. The same energy as supporting your country in the Olympics in a sport you didn't know existed until that week. There's something genuinely wholesome about it, right up until they try to convince you their guy is secretly better than the 2 people beating him every single week, purely because of where he was born. Then there's the new arrival, the person who got into the sport recently through whatever the algorithm fed them: clips, highlights, a documentary. Doesn't matter which door they came through. What matters is the enthusiasm. Give it 2 seasons and they'll be exactly as miserable as the rest of us. Right now though, they're just happy to be here, and we should probably let them enjoy it a little longer before reality gets them. Which brings us to the opposite end of that road, the long hauler. 20, 30 years deep into the sport, remembers eras most fans have only seen in grainy YouTube clips. This is the person who casually drops a reference to a driver lineup from before some of us were born and expects you to keep up. They've seen champions rise and fall. They've watched regulation changes come and go. And at this point, their loyalty isn't really to a team or driver anymore, it's to the sport itself. Almost like a long marriage where the passions mellowed into something steadier. They'll tell you the current era is either the best or worst they've ever seen, and they'll absolutely have already told you this exact opinion 3 times this season. Now the merch collector. This person's actual relationship to Formula One can basically be measured in cardboard boxes. They own 3 different team caps despite supporting one team, a jacket that costs more than their car insurance,
Budget approved.
and at least one item of clothing they will never wear outside because it looks slightly unhinged in daylight. Ask them about a recent technical regulation and they'll go quiet. Ask them where they got that specific limited edition polo and they'll talk for 20 minutes. Their credit card statement is basically a truer form of fandom than any amount of race day passion. Then there's the radio message guy. Doesn't care about the race, cares about the team radio. Every clip of a driver swearing at his engineer every time someone gets told to box and refuses.
They should get a penalty. This is fucking ridiculous. These morons! My God.
This person has it saved somewhere and will send it to the group chat within minutes of it happening. They couldn't tell you the current championship standings if their life depended on it, but they could recite 3 different radio meltdowns from memory, word for word, complete with the exact tone of voice. Honestly, the most entertaining person in your friend group, purely because nobody, not even the drivers, thinks anyone's actually listening that closely. We also need to talk about the steward's court judge. This is the person who, the moment any contact happens on track, immediately has a fully formed legal opinion about exactly exactly how many seconds of penalty should be applied, citing precedent from 3 seasons ago that may or may not be relevant. They treat every steward's decision like a Supreme Court ruling and get personally offended when the actual penalty doesn't match their private tribunal's verdict. You will never win an argument with this person because they've already rehearsed a counter-argument in the shower that morning. Now on to the Doomer supporter. This is someone who has picked a team that is structurally, mathematically, spiritually not going to win anything this year, and has decided to love them anyway. Every race weekend is an exercise in finding tiny victories inside enormous defeats. A car finishing 12th instead of 15th is treated like a podium. A driver simply not spitting off is treated like a personal triumph. There's something almost noble about it, choosing to care deeply about a team with no realistic hope, purely because loyalty isn't supposed to be conditional on actually winning things. It's also, frankly, a great way to keep your expectations so low that literally nothing can disappoint you, which honestly might be the healthiest coping mechanism in this entire list. Then the opposite of that, the glory rider. Whoever's winning right now, that's their guy, that's their team, always has been. Don't ask them about 3 seasons ago. This is the fan equivalent of only showing up to the party once the good food's already out. They'll swear up and down they've always supported the current dominant driver, right up until that driver has one bad season, at which point they quietly, silently vanish from the fan base like they were never there. You'll never catch them admitting it, but you'll notice their social media bio quietly updating every 18 months. Now let's talk about the parasocial superfan. This is the person whose actual knowledge of the sport is thinner than their knowledge of a specific driver's personal life. They know his coffee order, his workout routine, his ex, his current relationship status, and possibly his blood type. Their whole personality during a race weekend orbits entirely around whether their favorite driver looked happy in a post-race interview. They're not really watching a sport. They're watching a very expensive, very loud soap opera, and honestly, given how dramatic the sport actually is, that's not even an unreasonable way to enjoy it. Then the rule skeptic. This is your friend, your cousin, your coworker, who doesn't watch F1 at all but has strong opinions about it anyway. They'll tell you it's just cars driving in a circle, that the result's decided by the car, not the driver, and that they don't get why anyone would watch something so repetitive. Meanwhile, they watch the same sport every week where grown men chase a ball for 2 hours and somehow that's more exciting to them. You could show them the tensest last lap battle in years and they'd still say the same thing because their opinion was never really about the sport. It's about not wanting to admit they don't understand the strategy. We can't skip the team principal analyst. This is the fan who has somehow developed strong, detailed opinions about which team boss should be fired, which one's secretly brilliant, and which one is quietly sabotaging their own team through bad management, all based on a handful of press conference clips and a lot of confidence. They'll tell you exactly how they'd run the team if given the chance, despite having zero actual experience running anything more complex than a fantasy league. Somehow, they're sometimes right, which is the most annoying part. Now the podcast fan doesn't watch the races, consumes every single post-race debrief, every preview show, every driver interview across 4 different podcasts, and shows up to conversations already having absorbed 6 hours of analysis before the rest of us have even finished watching the highlights. They'll casually reference something like a pundit said in passing like it's common knowledge, and you'll have to pretend you also listened to that 3-hour episode about tire allocation strategy. Deeply informed, slightly insufferable, occasionally read about things before anyone else. Then the merch boycotter, the fan who's decided on principle that they will not spend a cent on official team gear because of some grievance from 3 seasons ago, a driver swap they didn't agree with, a strategy call that cost their favorite driver a result, whatever it was. They wear an old shirt from before the falling out like a badge of honor, and they will absolutely bring it up unprompted, mid-conversation, about something completely unrelated. Their loyalty to the team survived, their willingness to fund the team did not. We should mention the group chat analyst. Every single session, practice, qualifying, sprint, race, this person is narrating live into a group chat nobody asked them to run. Lap-by-lap updates, dramatic reactions to pit stops, fully formed conspiracy theories about strategy calls, all typed out in real time whether or not anyone's actually reading. If you mute this chat during a race weekend, you'll return to genuinely hundreds of messages, most of which boil down to some version of screaming into the void about a 5-second penalty. Then the merchandise-free purist, the fan who insists the only real way to enjoy the sport is raw. No team allegiance, no driver bias, just pure appreciation of the racing itself. They'll tell you they don't have a favorite, they just love good racing, right up until you notice they conveniently always seem happiest when a specific team is losing. Nobody is actually neutral. Some people are just better at hiding their bias behind the word purist. Let's talk about the weather obsessive. impressive. This person checks 4 different forecast apps the night before a race and none of them agree, so they spend the entire morning refreshing radar maps like they're personally tracking a hurricane. A 10% chance of rain, and they're already planning their whole day around it, texting everyone they know that it might mix up the grid. 9 times out of 10 it doesn't rain at all, and they act personally betrayed by the sky as if the clouds owed them something. We should also mention the commentator loyalist. This fan has an incredibly strong borderline emotional attachment to one specific commentator or pundit and will defend their calls, their voice, their little catchphrases like it's a family member being criticized. Suggest that maybe a race would have been better with a different voice in the booth and you'll get a reaction usually reserved for insulting someone's cooking. They'll quote a famous commentary line from a decade ago completely unprompted, mid-conversation, and expect you to already know exactly which race they mean. Then the once-a-year fan. This person watches exactly one race annually, usually whichever one is the closest to where they live or whichever has the most name recognition, shows up with genuine enthusiasm, asks who's winning the championship like it's breaking news, and then disappears again until the exact same weekend rolls around next year. They'll have strong, extremely confident opinions based on 90 minutes of viewing a year, and somehow those opinions never actually update, no matter how much the sport changes in between. We can't forget about the comparison historian. Every single moment in a current race reminds this person of a nearly identical moment from 20 years ago, which they'll describe in exhausting detail whether or not you ask for the comparison. A driver defends a position under pressure, and suddenly you're getting a 5-minute breakdown of a completely different battle from an era you weren't even watching. They're not wrong that history repeats itself in this sport, they're just incapable of experiencing the present without immediately filing it under a reference from the past. Then the chaos enjoyer. Doesn't care who wins, doesn't care about championship implications, just wants carnage. Rain delay, safety car, a first lap pileup. This person is thriving while everyone else is stressed. They'll openly admit they were hoping for a red flag purely because it makes for better television, and honestly, at least they're being honest about it, unlike everyone pretending they don't secretly enjoy a bit of mess too. Now let's talk about the sponsor spotter. This person cannot watch a single lap without pointing out a logo. They'll interrupt a genuinely tense overtake to mention that a particular energy drink brand has a new livery placement this weekend, or that a watch company's sponsorship deal apparently just got extended. They notice things nobody asked them to notice, and somehow always knows which team just signed which random regional bank as a partner before it's even announced properly. Useless information delivered with the confidence of a war correspondent. We should also mention the fitness tracker fan. This person is deeply, unreasonably invested in driver workout routines, cockpit heart rate data, and how many G-forces a neck can supposedly withstand. They'll bring up a driver's off-season training regime completely unprompted, usually to explain why their favorite driver is clearly in better shape than a rival, based entirely on a training video posted to social media. They understand grip levels and reaction times purely through the lens of gym content, and honestly, half the time they're not wrong. Drivers really do train like lunatics. And finally, the person every single one of these categories eventually becomes, the burnt out veteran. Started as the new arrival, evolved through several of these phases, and has landed somewhere between deeply informed and completely exhausted. They still watch every season, they still care. Somehow, despite years of evidence that caring about the sport mostly just leads to disappointment, they've made peace with the fact that loving Formula One is basically a long-term project in managing your own expectations, and they keep coming back anyway, because when it's good, it's actually good, and that's apparently enough to keep doing this to yourself for another 20 years. They'll tell you they're thinking about quitting the sport at least once a season, usually right after a particularly bad result for their team, and they will never actually do it, because deep down, they know there's nothing else on television that makes them feel quite the specific mix of hope and despair every other Sunday. So there you go, Formula One fans, the full roster, all of them a little bit different, most of them a lot more similar than they'd like to admit. Somewhere between the stats guy quoting tire deltas nobody asked for and the burnt out veteran quietly refreshing the timing app at 3 a.m., that's basically the entire sports fan base, held together by shared suffering and the occasional genuinely brilliant race that makes all of it worth it. If you recognize yourself in more than 3 of these, that's not an insult, that's just what happens when you let a sport about cars going fast take up permanent residence in your personality. See you next race weekend, wherever you land on this list.